Hello, everyone. I am clinical psychologist Dr. Ali Mattu.
Hey, and I'm Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek. And look close, one of us is a real doctor.
And we'll let you decide who that might be as this panel goes on. WonderCon. Larry, it's WonderCon 2020. I think we should tell WonderCon our WonderCon. No, it's WonderCon 2021. So I think we should tell them the story of WonderCon 2020.
Here's the story of a lovely podcast.
That was started out of the rubble of the pandemic.
No, don't. They can turn off. Unlike Saturday mornings live, they can actually turn away much easier. No, hey everybody, listen. So Ali and I came up with a great idea for the 2020 WonderCon panel submission process. Is why don't we take both of our specialities and merge them into a great panel? Even have a couple more guests. Mental health and Star Trek, looking at Star Trek through a mental health lens, looking at mental health through a Star Trek lens. We were going to look at the subject of the freshly finished series of Picard and what it talks about trauma and grief and what lessons we can learn from that. And of course, we cooked up this great idea in, say, February 2020. Well,
and it was accepted.
Yes, it was accepted.
Yeah, and we had our flights. Well, I had my flight scheduled. We had our hotels booked. We were gonna come down to Anaheim and have a really great panel that brought both of our experiences together. Me as a psychologist, and Larry, you as a Trekspert and Star Trek historian.
Okay, but I have a theater degree and I have a journalism degree. But okay. There's something a little bit, Trekspert's a cute word, but there's something about it. But look, as we all know, WonderCon did not happen in person. It went virtual. But we thought this was such a great idea for a one-off panel that we should do a podcast. I mean, it was either find some new bread to bake or it was start a podcast because it was COVID-19 times. And neither one of us were strangers to doing productions on YouTube, doing live shows, doing podcasts. So our new multi-stream show, Life Support Live, was born in April a year ago, a child of the pandemic. And look, we, to mark the 1-year anniversary-ish, and to come full circle with this, we thought we would do a panel version of what we do every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Rather than have a theme or a watch-along or a guest or whatever, it is a year, right, Ali? It's been a year.
It's been a year.
That's a perspective. People do stuff with year anniversaries, so we thought we would too.
Yeah, and so what we are doing, our show usually on Saturdays, it's a live stream.
Mm-hmm.
It is a discussion focused on one theme in Star Trek. The theme might be about friendship. It might be about trauma. We might be talking about attention and distraction or anger. But what we're doing today is we're giving you a little bit of what we've learned about 2020's Star Trek and how it's helped us to get through the 2020 pandemic.
Or as we say, how to boldly go through uncertain times. Hashtag
have a little fun, along the way as well. Larry, there's as we look back on we had a lot of Star Trek in 2020. We had Star Trek Picard. We had the premiere of Lower Decks. We had a new season of Star Trek Discovery. There actually ended up being a lot of stuff from those stories that was very relevant to the mess of the world of 2020. Right. So that's what this panel is all about. Dr. Trek and Dr. Ali, we're going to be diving into all of that, and hope this helps you a little bit. Just kind of is a nice little fun hour deep dive into Star Trek.
Right. And what's different from the Saturday morning show is we're not doing this live, and we don't have our wonderful community chatting in with us and offering some sidebar comments and figuring out when we've gone over the line or when we're under the line, or throwing out our Saturday morning the drinking game prompts or whatever. But no, we have a lot to say. The most amazing thing to me about Star Trek in 2020 is that all the Star Trek saw, right, the episodes of Picard, and then the 23 straight weeks of Lower Decks and then Discovery Season 3 was all written and mostly filmed before anybody knew what a
Yeah.
COVID-19 virus was
Yeah.
and what a pandemic looked like in a lockdown, which was amazing. It's almost a reinforcement of some of the universality of what makes Star Trek after 55 years, that
Yeah.
people all felt like that had been written just for us right now when it hadn't been. It had been the year before.
You can keep going back to good Star Trek stories and get new meanings, new understandings, new ideas from them. And not only was 2020 Star Trek helpful in giving me something to look forward to, that what was it, Wednesday nights, late night Wednesdays is when the new episodes would come out.
Right. Well, Pacific midnight time. The rest of the world
midnight.
Early morning. Right.
Right, and not everyone had access to Lower Decks. We know a lot of people were missing out on that, but it did not only did it give me something to look forward to, and it helped me to just kind of get through the week. Like, okay, I'm 2 days away from the next episode of Lower Decks, but the stories. There are some really big themes that came out of them, and maybe we should dive into that now.
Well, right. And a year ago, as we said, we had Picard, right? And Picard was going to be our focus for the whole hour, but now it's got crowded because I think Lower Decks, as even it was a good sign that I had a lot of hope for Lower Decks. A lot of people were a little trepidatious about an animated Star Trek. I mean, maybe it'll be fun, but we won't take it seriously. Well, and by the end of the run of Lower Decks, people were there were a lot of folks out there that enjoyed Lower Decks more than the other two live action editions. Everybody's got, an opinion all over the place. And then Discovery really, proved it was taking on this new niche for itself, this new format time wise, and had a lot to say to a lot of people. Of course, we're not going to get into critiquing the shows here as we do every Saturday.
Yeah, we take
from the episodes what we need for our theme. But for most of the time, people were enjoying the episodes that came to the community. And we take what we want. Yeah.
We like to say there's if you want to debate Star Trek, there's a lot of places on the internet where you can do that. What Larry and I like to do is really look at the intersection of Star Trek and mental health. Use Star Trek to understand mental health a little bit better. Use mental health to understand Star Trek a little bit better. And let's do that. Let's do that with Star Trek Picard.
What do we say at the beginning of every show, Ali? Star Trek to better ourselves and the rest of humanity is.
Yeah. Life Support Live is about understanding how these stories can help us to boldly go in our own lives to better ourselves and the rest of humanity. And
to
then,
paraphrase
of course,
a famous starship captain. But as another famous starship captain once said, wherever our mission takes us, we'll try to have a little fun along the way. And we mean that every week. Yeah.
So let's talk about Star Trek Picard, Larry. This is a show that, at its very core, has a lot to say about trauma. It has a lot to say about grief. It has a lot to say about getting support from others. It has a lot to say about intense emotional experiences, and not just with Jean-Luc, with
everyone around him. Yes, has a lot to say about not hanging out a lot in dark, damp spaces. That can lead to trouble.
Yeah, that's never good in any science fiction genre to be doing.
Former Borg cube or otherwise, right?
Yeah, I know. I was really struck by the series and how much it really deeply explored that. And before we even get into Star Trek Picard, I mean, Jean-Luc is a character who has he's been assimilated. He has contributed to Wolf 359. He lost his brother. He lost his nephew, his sister-in-law. This is and he in the blink of an eye lived through the whole loss of a civilization. In Inner Light, and then also he was also stabbed in the heart and had an experience with.
Whoa, Ali! We're talking about bright, shiny, happy TNG here. What? Dark?
Yeah, I know.
People in the 90s.
Oh yeah. Oh well, usually with a little bit of whoosh A little Q
A
magic
little
helps
a little
to
Q flash, right?
yeah.
Sometimes.
With actually all of those things we could trace back to Q. Q Who with the
Right,
Borg,
right.
Tapestry, whoosh, a little bit of Q
Mhm.
there too. It's all
It's a
Q's fault
wonderful
there.
career. Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, before we even get to Star Trek Picard, Jean-Luc Picard is a character who has gone through a lot, Larry.
Yeah. Well, if you say so. I'm still saying that the bright, shiny, happy lights of TNG obviously obscured my vision here. I didn't pick up on all this trauma. But no, I'm totally kidding. It's funny, but it's one of the aspects here, and one of the things we talk about is even at times is our lens on our bright, shiny, happy, our rosy colored glasses, looking back on somebody, even looking at Star Trek and how over the generations and over the decades we've colored that. And we don't get into this. We love the shows for our topic of the week, but there is a layer, and we can't help but get into that. And our community is a little different. Like, people all have their favorites. They've always had their favorite series, but it's almost a meta layer of what we're talking about, the way we look at these shows. And it is fun to. I love watching the people who gave up on DS9 because it was too hard to follow, and I missed this week's episode, and now I'm lost. And 20 years later, it's binging, and it's a moot point, and people get it. And so, we don't follow the controversy of the moment when there are new Star Treks coming down the pike, but no pun intended. But but that is a meta layer, and we can also apply that not just with the new Star Treks, but looking back at the older series. And so I'm kidding
Yeah.
about this whole thing about the happy dappy TNG, but when we look at the long the long journey, the long road getting from there to here, we can see these points come up. And it is and that's why Picard was such an attractive character for Kurtzman's group, and for Michael Chabon as the showrunner to dive into that.
And when we look at Picard in TNG, no one's gonna bend or break him, right? Like, so why? We can do this all day, folks. Larry and I are here all week long. But
Try the
why? Why did Jean-Luc Picard? While we see him struggle with many of the things that he's experienced, like, why did he stay resilient in the Next Generation? Yes, he broke down with his brother, really talking about what just happened in Best of Both Worlds. In the is that
Family?
episode called Family? Yeah, in Family.
Yes, it is.
And yes, we see him in Generations going through some of that grief. Of the loss of his family, but why when he's gone through these traumas does he stay resilient? Larry, I should probably define what trauma means. Like, trauma is when you have experienced. It's not about seeing or doing something horrific or having something horrific done to you. It's really about
or get through 20 years of no new Star Trek. That's not it.
Right. That's not it.
Or even 10. Or even 10 months.
Those long fallow periods of no new Trek, which, yeah. The 2000s were one of the shortest, I feel like, periods of no Trek. From the end of Enterprise to Star Trek 2009, that wasn't that long of a period of time.
No, but see, and I don't want to get off on it, but to see the movies, it's Kelvin, but also it's movies. And people wanted, this is what I kept trying to say all the way through.
People wanted
Yay
TV.
for the Kelvin movies, but we want small screen week-to-week adventures like we've had for the last year.
Yeah, it's different. It's so different.
It's what Star Trek. It's the DNA of Star Trek. Yeah.
2020 Star Trek felt a lot like late 90s Star Trek, where we had Next Generation, which went right into Voyager. DS9 was going on along that. It felt very, very similar to that.
And a split Phantom at times.
Yeah. No, exactly. We had that.
Another rose-colored glasses, guys. That happened in the 90s and the aughts. But trauma.
Everything that's happened before has happened again, to quote another sci-fi series. But trauma is really about when you have gone through something that really makes you fundamentally question basic beliefs that you have about yourself, about other people, about the world around you. And Picard has experienced that in The Next Generation. I think the key difference here between The Next Generation and to get us to Star Trek Picard, the series, is he relied on the support of his crew. He relied on Deanna Troi. He relied on William Riker. He had his mission. He still had meaning and purpose in life. He he was still doing all the Starfleet things and had the support of his crew.
He had a
And
structure to cling to.
he was able to
Yes.
cling on to that structure.
I was trying to go clinical and therapeutic there, and no, you had to go for the pun. Okay, yes.
I'm a punny guy, Larry. But that Picard that we get introduced to, he's hanging out with his Romulan friends a little bit, but beyond that, he's quite alienated and quite isolated from
no
the
pun
people
intended either. Yeah, I mean, we say they're caretakers. They're caretaking the vineyards. They're caretaking him, and he's got to have some human contact, even though they're Romulans. He's got to have some humanoid contact, and I love those. By the way, where's the Larish and Shaban show? I could take that, but
I know, me too.
Flashback to their days in the Tel Shiar, but no, it was great. It was you saw this is he broken? He's retreated from the world. They've rejected him on 2 or 3 fronts. Everything he thought he knew had blown up. The world, that feeling of the world moving on, and I think a lot of us can. There's been so much change in the world, even ahead of the pandemic, the globalization, the tech revolution. If you were, born at a certain age, maybe you felt like the world passed you by, maybe prematurely. So, I mean, there's a lot of sympathy and empathy there for Picard, as well as viewers, we're watching the nostalgia of his data flashbacks and nightmares and dreams. And that's intriguing just as a storytelling device, but there's something else. And I don't know, when we're in trauma, we're watching the guy in trauma, but it feels like if you can find some nostalgia anywhere to get out of the doom and the gloom and the dark, and it feels like that's almost what's happening to him. And then you throw in the new element here that shakes up that stodgy retreat that's actually he's being sucked into when this android girl shows up. Well, they don't know if she's android, but when Dawes shows up, and it shakes things up. And then yes, he finds a new support crew. He rejects going back to the old ones at first, even. Right, he says, "I can't bother Worf and Geordi with this," so he has to carve out a new way of clawing his way back.
And there's a lot there that
with a mission
that speaks to what we were all going through. The pandemic, I think, has for many people fundamentally changed their ideas about safety, about connection,
about work,
to other
about
people,
family, about
work and absolutely,
about the future itself, what will look like. Yeah.
Yes. In much the same ways that Picard is struggling with not being able to help the Romulans when they were encountering that supernova, not being able to get Starfleet to coalesce around saving the Romulans, not being able to help all those Romulans that you meet, the what are those nuns called? The Romulan nuns, the Larry,
the call Kavat. We're gonna edit this.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ollie, for getting me to the Shock Kavat, the
Shock Lavat. That sounds really close.
That's
you can fact check us while we're looking for that. But he wasn't able to help them and feels such responsibility, and is feeling this responsibility at a time when he's also either whether he further isolates himself as a result of that, or if that also just sort of I mean he kind of leaves Starfleet partially out of protest for their rejection of help. And I think that's what sets these events in course. Is he had a fundamental belief in Starfleet and in himself and in what he could do to help the universe. I think Picard's ethos has so been an ambassador about someone who wants to bring peace, cultivate a reduction in conflict around the galaxy. And this is such
conference meeting. Yes.
Yeah. All those Hilton conference room scenes that we love from TNG. And he wasn't able to do that, Larry. And not only was he not able to do that, but we also see him still struggling with the grief of losing Data. And, we all have so much grief that we have gone through in 2020 and continue to go through. Some of us have lost people. All of us have lost a way of life. And
lost our
Grief.
freedom, even lost our all our familiar pathways that brought us joy. We're trying to recreate them, and that's been a struggle. And we've
Yeah.
we've found a little joy in I beat you there, life and fate. But it's been a struggle all up and down. But I would say added that list of losses, the loss of who he thought he was as a
Yes.
person. Like, here's how I carry
Yes.
myself, and I've had all that taken away. It started with the debate over the Romulans, but he lost his rank. He lost his friendships that he'd made even in his post Enterprise with Raffi.
With
Right?
Rafi. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we see the consequences that has on Rafi as well. And this is where you want to talk about Rafi? Do you want to talk about 7 of 9? Do you want to talk about Deanna and William and Will?
Well, I call him Will. I didn't know you didn't know him well, but yes.
We're on a he's I'm not at the commander rank yet, so I feel like I can't quite go there. Well, I'm not at the acting captain rank, I guess I should say.
And we're not at the lower decks rank, so we're really not at talking.
No, this is the problem.
First
of being
name familiar.
A lieutenant commander. You know, you're kind of in the middle there. But with Will and Deanna, which is my favorite episode of Star Trek Picard,
and a lot of people.
And it's not just because we get to see this trio together again, and not just because we get to see Deanna have some of the finest moments of a therapist in all of Star Trek, and how she's able to help Picard move forward to where he needs to get to.
Tell me, counselor, you had some issues with Deanna Troy's counseling in the past?
Yeah, I hate plexing. I hate plexing so much.
Well, don't worry, at least Ezri got to redeem that depiction on DS9.
I know it's actually
buttons. Yes.
Yeah, you know how to push them. Larry. It's actually this new era of Star Trek that's, I think, given us some of the better depictions of a therapist with Admiral Cornwall in Star Trek Discovery, and now Deanna Troi in Star Trek Picard. We're seeing therapists who are really listening, really understanding, and helping people to move forward in just such a compassionate way.
Right,
and
right.
We didn't really see that before. And competently,
and all those
Larry.
food metaphors too from Dr. McGee.
Yes. I think one of my issues with past depictions has been just the lack of competence in these. Like, they don't necessarily know their patients. They don't necessarily know the best treatments. It's just.
Are you sure you're not looking at the state of therapy in the 24th century there through a very human-centric Sol 3 eye there? Maybe the galactic patchwork counseling here could be. Maybe it looks more incompetent to you than.
Fair point. I just wish the 24th century therapy didn't look like early 1900s therapy. You know, like we've made some improvements, but I'm getting on my soapbox.
Sometimes a phaser is just a phaser.
I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah.
But
or very behind, one of the two.
Right. Well, a little bit of all of the above. Time is a tiny.
It's a fire in which we do burn, and so we're talking about trauma here. Yes, we do. We have 2 hours on Saturdays, guys and gals.
Yeah, if you like this, come join us on Saturdays.
But Picard what pulls him out of it is a sense of mission. He finds new relationships. He forges things without LaForge, but he finds the ragtag group, the crew, and they have their ups and downs and even mysteries and tragedies. And you've got a renegade, highly touted scientist doctor here who's gone off on a tangent because she's been not Manchurian candidated here, but almost the next best thing. She's been set up to fail, to do somebody else's bidding. And anyway, it's a whole intrigues played out over several episodes. But as far as a personal arc for Picard, there is some redemption at the end. I mean, I'm running away here with the rest of the series, Ollie. What do you think?
Oh, I agree, Larry. We know in real life what helps people with trauma is, number one, getting a sense of control over your emotions again. And we also know that Picard has a neurodegenerative disease.
That too, yes.
He has that too, which does make him more emotional. So trauma can hotwire people's emotions, especially if they have it at a young age. If they experience trauma, it can make you more emotional. And getting a little bit more of a handle on your emotions helps.
Hold on, that's Discovery. Hold on.
I'm getting ahead of myself again.
Yep.
I'm jumping the timeline, or is Discovery jumping back? But no, it actually jumps forward.
Although,
it's all...
how old was Worf when his parents were massacred? See?
We can. There's a lot of trauma in Star Trek. We can go with all the series. We could do a whole deep dive into that. Oh wait, we do every Saturday morning on Trekland.
We actually talk about some light subjects too, kids. So yeah.
No, we have a lot of fun. But we see Picard get a little bit more emotional control as he's getting more connected with a crew, a sense of purpose, and also he meets Seven. He meets Hugh again. They're having these XBs. They're all XBs. And they're having that was actually one of my favorite threads in Star Trek Picard was the XB thread. They are all dealing with their trauma of being assimilated and trying to come out of that, which is a really beautiful storyline there. So he gets more emotional support as he's getting more connected with the crew, and as he is getting connected
finding
with
pieces of his puzzle.
Yes, yeah, and the last piece that can help people with trauma is forming a new narrative. And usually trauma can get you stuck in seeing things one way, and the more you're able to either talk about it or write about it, you can start to form a new narrative, and that's what Deanna helps him with. It's also what Data helps him with. Spoilers! I hope people have seen the series. We kind of have to spoil it. But my other favorite moment of Picard, Larry, is that conversation that Brent Spiner and Patrick Stewart have as Data and Jean-Luc again. Oh,
the one that the whole season builds toward.
Yes,
that conversation.
That little moment. You remember that? You remember?
Yeah,
I know it's easy to forget.
That in. Boy, I'm glad that didn't get cut for time on digital streaming. Yeah.
Oh gosh, that moment is I mean, it's quite, if you love these characters, it's a quite emotional moment of resolving grief, and grief is all about finding a way to live with the memories, finding a way to bring what you've lost, make it still a part of your life without it overwhelming you. And I think it has been overwhelming Jean-Luc for so long.
Oh, come on. Thanks for the memories. Yes, I'm sorry.
I wasn't sure what direction you were going there.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's what does it for Jean-Luc, Larry.
Cartoons. Yeah. And the whole issue that has tied some people in knots, the finale issue that he's in a fake body, he's in a golem body. That really upset a lot of people, and I just want to go. Yeah. So tell me again about Spock and his Genesis planet shell. I mean, it's Patrick Stewart playing the character as long as Patrick Stewart is able to play it, and that'll just be fodder for
Larry.
More. What is identity? What is real? I mean, fine, we'll go there next time.
So if folks don't know, which is probably everyone,
spoiler
Larry
alert.
and I met. Yeah, I know. Larry and I met at WonderCon, I don't know, 2012, 2013. We were on a panel together.
Right.
That me and my colleague, Dr. Drela Dementi, did about Star Trek and Star Wars. Anyways, one of my favorite conversations, recurring themes in Larry and my conversations, is how similar patterns in Star Trek keep playing out, and how we so get blinded to this. Like, Larry, you're absolutely right. Yeah, Spock is resurrected in a way that, if you look at it, it's kind of similar to what happens to Picard, but it just a slightly different spin. And yet people can lose sight of that. very easily.
Well,
Much,
yes, that's
you know,
why some of us have tried to make a career out of connecting the dots for folks over time, and
yes, yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
that's our Trekland mission too, right? And not that,
Yeah,
I don't paper over things. Everything is worthy of criticism. We're not talking about, blandly going
yeah.
vanilla on everything, but there's all kinds of context to bring. And unlike some mirror hopping captains who have their own agenda, I do not believe that context is only for kings. I'm happy to give it to the
No.
poppers too. Yeah. And
Yeah,
but that's
I mean,
yeah.
if we look at every time Star Trek has been significantly relaunched, whether it is the motion picture or and what was going to be Phase Two, or the Next Generation, the Kelvin movies, Discovery, similar themes have kind of played out in initial reluctance. This is not the captain I'm used to. Why is my captain bald? Um, to a few years later, oh wow, okay, well I can see what they're going for here. So yeah,
Mhm. Well,
so we'll
Star Trek
have
is about boldly going forward. Should we boldly go into our next topic?
I was about to say the same thing. So let's talk about a very, very, very different Star Trek series, which is Star Trek Lower Decks. Larry, you mentioned people were kind of iffy about it. I was very iffy about it after that first episode, but the episode I want to talk to you about was, I think, such a crowning achievement. It is one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek, and that is Crisis Point.
You're talking
Um,
about the penultimate episode of the
yes,
season, not even the
yes.
finale. But yeah, that was, I think that really, if you hadn't, the last few, I mean, on one hand, I think Lower Decks is a very cohesive season, more so than a lot of course, it's only 10 episodes. I
Mhm.
know.
And they're
But
short.
it's,
They're 20
yeah,
something minutes.
right. And it's a half hour. So it's even shorter than a short season, a modern short season. But yeah, there were some squidgy moments there in the opening 2 or 3 episodes, but I feel like overall there's a really cohesive mode. And overall, a lot of people were hesitant. They had trepidations about animated Star Trek, even though we had the beloved animated series, which still, to this day has leaves some people cold. But we've had the precedent. But then it's almost like that set people up to have a very carbon copy. We're just going to have the next generation with these characters. Well, no, it's a sense of humor. Mike McMahon has got a sense of humor. He displayed that in his 8th season of Next Generation book, Warped. So you should have known what to come. And it was still a surprising series. I was blown away by the attention to detail, both,
Yes.
the Easter eggs, but also the visual style was such a great, let's take Nemesis plus one and do this. And it wound up being, after people got over themselves and saw they really, and got up to speed with the animation manic pace,
Mm-hmm.
but they saw that they really, I mean, like I said, I think a lot of people came out of the year a little bit in shock, going, wow, was it the pandemic lockdown or what? But I think I enjoyed that better than, that's my favorite Star Trek, or that's one of my favorite Star Treks.
Yeah.
So it very quickly got up to a plateau of where we're talking about it and taking it seriously, taking the humor seriously. But it did get into some themes. And this episode you're talking about is the one that if you weren't on board by then, or if you were starting to see the potential, Crisis Point just blew people away like it blew you away.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, after 2 or 3 episodes, I was fully on board with Lower Decks, and I
Yeah.
think just in terms of my own mental health, I mentioned before how much I was looking forward to having new Star Trek every week, and I was
23
just having
weeks, new Star Trek.
23 weeks of new Star Trek, and now, Larry, we don't have new Star Trek yet, but we do have a mountain of content on Paramount Plus. We're not sponsored. Please sponsor us, Paramount Plus. That would be great. We're not sponsored though.
No.
What I
That's just
loved
one
about
mountain too far, maybe.
what I loved is just how much fun I was having with Lower Decks, and there's been, again, we've had a ton of fun, silly moments. Go watch A Fistful of Datas again. That is a very silly episode. What's the episode in DS9 where everyone shrinks? Or not everyone, but the runabout shrinks.
Yeah, One Little Ship.
One Little Ship. That is a silly episode. The Trouble with Tribbles is a silly episode of Star Trek. I know, Larry.
I must go
Context.
check that one out. I've never heard of that one before. Yeah.
It's easy to miss. They never really talk about tribbles ever again. It's not like they've been merchandised either.
Oh,
so
okay.
I totally get why you might have
I'll
missed
go
that
dig
one.
it out. Yeah.
I recommend it. Yeah.
Well, somebody had to get a piece of the action from that. So.
Haha, I see what you did there, Dr. Trek. I see what you did there. It was a lot of fun, and Crisis Point. There's so many moments where I was.
Wait a minute.
Bawling.
You mean Crisis Point, the rise of Invicta?
Yes,
Okay.
That is what I'm talking about. Oh my gosh, Larry!
The out of
This
control
episode.
hologram.
Not only are there little nods to each era of the films, and there's so much as a Star Trek fan to enjoy, like you were saying, all the little details. Like for my favorite is when there's the approach to the starship and they do so many passes, and eventually, the engineer is in tears just looking at the starship. You gotta appreciate.
You've got the titles, you've got the sign off.
Yes. Yeah,
who are these kids that they get to sign off like Dean Kelly and Leonard Nimoy? Yeah. But it's
there's
all
so many
fun.
wonderful moments. So not only is it just a lot of fun to watch, but there's a powerful, and I should say, there's a powerful message about mental health and about the power of storytelling. How holodecks and screens, holodecks being used as a stand-in for entertainment, how these can be very healthy in helping us to work through our own issues. Look, Larry, before 2020, we were so worried about screen time. And check it out. We now have been all on screens all the time. And I'm not saying it's great. There's a lot of problems associated with that.
Right.
But screens inherently by themselves do not turn us into zombies. The whole research on screen time is quite poor. Entertainment, storytelling, videos, all this sort of stuff, video games, they can be a source of escape, a source of connection, a source of fun. We can form real relationships with fictional characters. That's parasocial relationships, and those are real important relationships. Lower Decks in this episode celebrates all of that and says, like, this is okay, and this stuff can help you to deal with all the stuff that's going outside. Larry, it's like this episode was perfectly written for the world in which we were living when it came out.
Right. But again, all of these episodes were written well before March 2020. But it's almost sounding like somehow this silly little animated series has done the best thing that Star Trek does on the meta level, which is worked in a great concept, a great theme, a great issue in the subtext of having fun. It's just even more heightened. It's like an even more serious subject in an even sillier premise. I mean, it's like they've taken both to it's one thing to work in a metaphor or a theme or an allegory into, oh, look, it's a computer war for generations, or, but to take a crazy romp and work in a really serious undertone to that, it's like, wow, how can you not respect what Mike and his team did with that? I was just blown away. It's like, wait a minute, it's like Scotty when he realizes Troy is not just a pretty lady, she's a psychologist. The moment when he says, wait, it's the deleted scene, but when he says, wait a minute, you're a psychiatrist, you sneaked it in on me. We don't have quite that revelation. Well, we do. She has a revelation like that. And
well, you have no idea where that.
Right.
Yeah, you have no idea where that episode is going when it starts. But by the end, you have that moment of, wow, it was both making fun of Star Trek and celebrating it, and it was both
making fun of therapy and celebrating it.
And celebrating it.
With or without a food metaphor.
Right. That therapist. Oh, I
got
actually loved.
Yeah,
I love that therapist. And it's not only making fun of Mariner a little bit, but it's also pushing that character forward and helping you to understand all the episodes that's come before in a new light.
I mean, I know it wasn't the finale, but this show really was the cherry on top for the season. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. I seem to be infected with food metaphors now. So, okay.
I think you've been watching a little bit too much Lower Decks there, Larry.
Maybe so. Maybe so. Well, should we move on to Discovery? Should we look at?
Yeah. Let's talk about Discovery. I think there's a lot to say there as well.
The old kid on the block, as it were, this year.
Yeah, compared to these other series.
Or was
I know.
it?
Isn't that funny? Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny to think of?
But it's like Discovery moved across country and started a whole new life in a whole new neighborhood. As a series format, and as a show, yeah.
Larry, The Burn. This first episode that introduces us to the idea of the burn and takes us 900 years into the future. I saw this episode and I was so struck by the ideas of isolation, the ideas of being in this future and it's not what you anticipated it to be. The idea of how hard it is for people in this future world to connect with each other. The imagery, I don't know where they were in Iceland, or it was both beautiful.
They filmed it in Iceland, right.
It was both beautiful and haunting, and also the confusion that Michael Burnham was going through, the disorientation. I'm watching this and I'm like, this is such a metaphor for 2020. And it was all written, as you said earlier, all written before.
Right. They were wrapping up the filming of the finale era of the last couple of shows as the lockdowns were falling in March. And then the post-production, visual effects, the visual effects people all were working are pretty scattered anyway. That wasn't the things like scoring the music took forever, but they innovated. Yay, Star Trek.
And that was all done at home too, the scoring.
Right. So they got around it. They finally were able to, this whole year was skewed later, right? So everybody was like, where's all the new series we're getting? And that obviously the pandemic delayed that, but then they innovated they scienced the hell out of how to do that and did it. But the point being, yes, all of this was written pre-pandemic, and the dynamic, that's why I say in years to come, I hope we don't lose the context of how these dropped on us, because it's amazing that this was a theme. And if that may not have been the theme, the vibe around the theme, but by the time as an audience we saw them, we couldn't help but bring, the pandemic, loss of future security, the lockdown, the just being on an unstable foundation and wondering, how is this roller coaster going to? It wasn't even a roller coaster. It felt like our own personal floor was just shaky, and the fact that we could look over and see everyone else standing on some kind of a weird rollerboard, and that we're all going through it together, was not a whole lot of consolation at first. And that's what the crew, we start off with Burnham here by herself in her own isolated aspect, but then getting with the rest of the crew and everything being so off kilter and learning this new world that's familiar but different. How amazing is it that was the concept of the season before pandemic? It's just amazing.
Yeah, it's really it's.
I've left you speechless. That's amazing, right there.
Yeah. I've had such a up and down relationship with Star Trek Discovery, as I think everyone involved with Star Trek Discovery has also had.
You and whose army? Yes, before and behind the camera. Yeah.
Right, and I have consistently loved everyone involved, and I have consistently loved the cast, the crew, a lot of the design choices. What I've struggled with is some of the social commentary that I go to. It's not the only reason I go to Star Trek. You and I this is another evergreen conversation for Larry and Ali. Is Star Trek's a big it's a big playground.
It's a big tent. Yeah, a big sandbox.
It's a big tent. Yeah. It's a big sandbox.
It's a big sandbox in a tent.
Yeah, and a universe. It's a little bit of everything. Action, adventure, morality plays. We have some scary episodes. We've got hope episodes. We've got cautionary stories. We have so much in Star Trek.
And it gives you stuff to wear, and it gives you stuff to play with, and it gives you stuff to draw, and all those things.
Actually, this is the Discovery one. This is not the Badgeable. This is purely for communication of who you are, not that kind of communication.
This is the Portal 47 one. It's purely for promotion. It's not.
I do have my communicator here, though. I've got my Starfleet issue.
Okay.
Anyways, folks, we are also not sponsored by CBS or Paramount, but we are sponsored maybe by Portal 47 a little bit.
Or in the Psych Show.
Yes,
on YouTube. Yeah.
Right over there.
Okay.
So, focus. We got a panel to do here, Larry.
Yeah. Well, let's get started.
Yeah. So the thing with Discovery that I've struggled with is some of the real world social commentary, and I felt like that's been missing a little bit. And this season just completely blew me away in that. And I think before 2020, you could see it more as I would see it more as a cautionary story about xenophobia, nationalism, and isolation.
Right.
With 2020 as a lens, you can see it much more about how separated we are from each other because of the pandemic. How much we are all dealing with so much anxiety about the future, about how to live our lives, and the confusion, the struggle of not being able to plan more than a few days in advance. Right. Because you don't know what the world's going to look like. The characters are trying to figure it out in much the same way that we have been trying to figure out every phase of the pandemic.
The disruptions, right. You start to do the simplest normal thing, and suddenly you've got to do it in a completely different way. Whether you're, going to a grocery store or you're trying to score the soundtrack for a TV series. I mean, whatever it is you're doing, it's like, I have to do it standing on my head with my left ear or something. It's felt that way at times. Now we've all gotten a little better at it, and now hopefully we're coming out. But it's been a year, going in one end and out the other of this last. I say, and I think everybody wised up to the fact that there were a lot of folks that were really hoping when that calendar magically changed at midnight on December 31st. That it would all be bright, shiny, happy, normal again, and that hasn't happened. It's been more of a calendar year plus, right? March
absolutely.
2020 to March now and on beyond. But we've learned so much. I think in the long run we'll be much smarter for it. And the pandemic has ripped the Band-Aid, to use a tired metaphor there, off a lot of issues in society that we ought to take a look at too. And I hope we don't go, but people say, let's not go back to normal. Let's go back to a new normal where we've learned some lessons along the way. But that's kind of where Discovery is. They've been learning lessons along the way, and a new normal, and having their eyes opened.
I think there's two things here I want to say. One is I listened back to our over 40. By the time this panel airs, we'll have crossed over 50 episodes that we've done. Mm-hmm. I think we'll be close to our 1-year anniversary too of doing this.
Right.
I listened back to some of our old episodes, and each phase of this pandemic has felt so different. The challenges of it, from getting toilet paper to the idea of flattening the curve. Folks, we need to flatten the curve. And then, even countries that were doing everything right experienced massive spikes due to unforeseen events. Due to, and then later news of vaccines and potential hope there, to then struggle with access to the vaccines and distribution of the vaccines, to new variants, to, Larry, like every phase of this, there is so much new stuff. I think back a year ago, we had no idea how this thing was spread. We had no idea.
Right. Well, we had wrong theories, right? It was don't worry about a mask, just wash your hands every 5 seconds and do it 20 seconds and say it if you know the Star Trek original voiceover, Just say space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of Starship Enterprise. But it's 20 seconds. That's such a great help. But then it's like, oh no, maybe we should have been wearing masks all along. Oh, we had a shortage of PPE.
We
Yeah,
were cleaning surfaces.
it has been a
all over
long
the
road
place.
getting from there to here.
Yeah,
Really.
it really has. Oh my gosh, and no one has bent or broken me yet. I'm still here. You're still here. So that's one thing that really sticks out to me, and that is a big part of the season of Star Trek Discovery.
The
But
disruption,
there's
eventually.
the disruption, yeah, and the constantly having to learn new things, as we see one of our favorite officers having to learn how to function as new comm badges that are also tricorders and also personal transporters.
Oh,
and,
Linus.
yeah.
No.
But Larry,
Well,
I want to ask you about the quote that lives on in our minds so much.
you mean my quote that I've shared with the
Yes.
world? Because no one
Yes,
else
that you
obviously
love.
saw it when that episode flew by. No, it's
Can
in
you
the
tell us
same-
about that?
Right. No, it struck me the way nothing in Star Trek has struck me in years, partly because of the world we've been living through the last 3, 4, 5 years, which is Admiral Vance's quote when he's in the conference, when they're trying to negotiate. And he's basically, they're talking about, well, let's move forward. And they both want to move forward into the future, but she does not want to acknowledge what's happened in the past and what are the reasons that got them to this place, which is when I see people wanting to rush headlong into a future, forget the causes of a pandemic, forget the causes of, I don't know, the fake news around which everything now has to work twice as hard to get resolved and bring people along with trust and the things that have interrupted social cohesion. When Vance says, she says, who cares about the past? And he says, the past is the light by which we illuminate the future.
Yes.
Right? We don't just go running into the cave because we think we know where the cave goes, or, well, we'll feel our way along. Don't worry about it. It's like, why do that when we have this light that is shining brightly on the best and the worst? And just to ignore that, it's another turn on the old, he who forgets the past is doomed to repeat it. But it just felt very prescient for our times that, using that metaphor of a light, the past is the past is not something we say, oh, well, that's done now, let's move on. And that's the attitude of a lot of people. It's like, why learn history? Because it keeps us from repeating things over and over again, making stupid mistakes. And hopefully we can learn pandemic mistakes about how to deal with, just on a viral. But there's a lot more packed into that. There's a lot more packed into that line across the board for society.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that scene, to get to that scene is such a it's doing everything I've wanted Star Trek to do. It gives you not only a better understanding of the world around you, but it also gives you a potential new way forward. And so you mentioned the pandemic and understanding everything that contributed to both the genesis, device forbidden, the genesis of the pandemic, but also our failed responses and some of the good responses we've had. Like, we need to understand everything that happened in 2019 going into 2020 that contributed to this pandemic, so that we are in better position to deal with the future one. And also, Larry, I think a lot about social justice, and I think a lot about racial justice in 2020. You cannot move forward on these issues without, and especially in America, without understanding the past, the structures, slavery, Jim Crow, police, how the police organizations were formed. We have to understand that past if we want any attempt at building a more peaceful, more equitable future.
And how that social justice and racial justice plays into economic justice overall, and how we had a infrastructure here when it came time to even having a vaccine, and then dealing with the immediate problems of the vaccine, the loggerheads, the dysfunctional the greatest nation in the world. Well, at times, just trying to, when we have a vaccine, how to get it to people. We have 50
Yeah.
different answers going on here about what's going
Yeah.
on and how to get it to
Yeah.
people. And
And
yeah, the
the,
whole medical healthcare field, and we call them essential workers. What are we paying them? How are we treating them? I mean,
yes.
all of
Yes.
that. We have a national catastrophe happening, and all of a sudden we wake up and realize it's not the people with the five word titles. It's our everyday grocery workers and farm workers and delivery people. I mean,
Yeah,
sure.
this is absolutely absolutely true. And um
Well,
COVID
thank you.
has been COVID's been the great clarifier. It has
Hmm.
clarified who has access, who is vulnerable, who has means, who doesn't. The communities that have been most impacted by COVID-19 are also the communities that have the least access to quality healthcare, stable employment, all of these kind of things. We know communities of color have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. And like history is the only way. It gives us the light to illuminate the future. And
Hmm.
this is
Oh, it's a great line. You
Osira.
write down.
Yeah. Osira does not want to be held accountable for the past actions she has
Hmm.
taken. And that is one of the painful
Fresh
moments.
start.
Yes.
Yes.
This
Yeah.
is one of the painful moments that we are going to be in as we move forward out of this pandemic, as we go through the reconstruction of it. We have to take a very difficult look at how we got to 2020 if we want to
Hmm.
build that future, more optimistic
And
vision that brings us to Star Trek.
everyone with a stake in the old status quo is already there. I mean, you use that term. I really hope Reconstruction 2 goes better than Reconstruction 1,
Yeah.
150 years ago. But no,
Yeah.
you already see that. The people that have a stake in the status quo being exactly the same are all like, okay, phew, let's get back to normal. But I hopefully, and a large chunk of people would have been able to say, wait a minute, let's not go back to the old normal. Let's have the new normal. The good thing that, the silver lining of such a disruption has been a lot more, just as a lot of people had their eyes woke to the racial inequity going on, thank you, iPhones. But how all of this plays across the system top to bottom, how the
Yeah.
pandemic has exposed, everything from logistical systems and our vulnerabilities to healthcare
Uh,
delivery, to the way we vote, the way we carry on life. What are the way people work with working at home, and the bosses that, no, I need them here so I can keep my eye on them. Well, your company would fall apart if they weren't, like this whole thing about I gotta see you working to know you're working. How about when everything falls apart, you fire me because I didn't do my job because it's obvious? Is that so
yeah.
hard?
Yeah.
It's like there are
Yeah.
people for years talked about how, and then the impact. Look at the climate, how everybody not driving improved the atmosphere. I mean,
Yeah.
we had less pollution for a year because of the stay-at-home lockdown. So I mean, there's just across the board things to. Oh, I'm sorry, we're supposed to talk about Star Trek.
Well,
Geez.
I'm going to bring it back to Star Trek right now, which is folks often forget, Star
Take it.
Trek fans often forget that what came right before First Contact was not Generations. What came right before the event of First Contact
Yes.
was World War III.
Yeah.
And Earth was in Star Trek is a post-apocalyptic dystopian story, Earth was nearly destroyed, our governments were in chaos, and in much the same way that
But
the EU
classic
was
rock
formed.
and jukeboxes survived, thank God.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Ooby dooby. Ooby dooby 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 doo doo doo
And
doo
and
doo.
one Atlas missile, one Titan missile, excuse me. Yeah.
In much, the European Union was formed out of the chaos of World War II, where nations came together and said, "We can't do this again. We have now gone to war with each other 2 times in a few decades. Let's intertwine
Aside from
our
all the wars
economies."
before that, even. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Let's intertwine our economy so we're interdependent on one another. One of the upsides of a crisis is it does open people up to change.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe Earth was set up in such a way that it was so open to a new peaceful way forward that when the Vulcans came along, it was the right people at the right time that allowed for all the building that led to Enterprise and then the original series events and so on and so forth. It's my great hope, Larry, that out of this, we realize that we are so interdependent and interconnected with one another, and that real change is possible. What you said about the climate is so hopeful to me, that in such a short period of time, we enacted so much change that it's kind of rewritten the way we understand environmental science. That things can happen pretty quickly. So it like Picard, like Burnham, like Mariner, we are all capable of not only struggling with trauma, but also growing from it. And I hope that is what happens going into 2021, going into 2022, that we are all able to kind of grow from this. And with that, Larry, this was our WonderCon panel.
There it is, the WonderCon panel we didn't have times 3 divided by 3 or something.
Just don't divide it by 0. That's I know that's a bad thing. Larry, if people want to join Life Support Live, how can they do that?
Well, they can join us. There's no membership dues. There's no Patreon. There's just show up with us Saturday morning if you want to watch live. We'd love to have you live and be in our. Normally we have a wonderful streaming chat here, not a crazy one, 10,000 entries a second, but we've got a really thoughtful community that's growing every week, and you can join us there. That's 10 a.m. Pacific. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitch. We're on Twitch at Life Support Live. We're on YouTube and my channel, Larry Nemecek, and even Facebook, Larry Nemecek's Trekland. You can catch us there. And all 3 of those channels were archived afterwards, so you can catch us later if you like. But no, we're at a time when you can get us 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. UK time, and 7 p.m. Central Europe. So we have a global audience, and it's great. We have opinions and we have viewpoints from all over the world. We've got the Outback in Australia. Shout out to Narda. We've got folks from around the world with us, and we really do.
We got the podcast, and we got the podcast
yes.
as well. You can also listen on demand very easly on podcasts wherever, whatever podcast network you like. And if you'd like to stay in contact with Dr. Trek and myself, I am at Ollie Mattu on social media. My YouTube channel, which makes psychology fun and easy to understand, is the Psych Show on YouTube. YouTube.com/Psych Show will get you right to me. What about you, Larry?
Right. Well, aside from our Saturday visit here on Life Support Live, I have a show myself where I do a little commentary every week, and we also open it up to the chat of the audience, and we look at the streaming TV ratings. That's on Tuesdays, and so I call it Trekland Tuesdays Live on all those multi-streaming channels, my YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Same things. That's at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. What is that, 8? 9 UK time, 10 Central Europe. And again, it's a very global audience. But look, if you really want to deep dive Star Trek with me, like the way we do in Trekland, you can come and, my Facebook, we have a Facebook for Life Support Live, by the way, too. We should mention that. And now what is that thing that sounds like it's disunifying, but it really brings people together? Discord. We have a Discord channel now for Life Support Live.
Yeah.
Right.
If you love mental health, if you love Star Trek, come join us, folks. We'd love to have you.
And if you really want to deep dive with me the Trekland way and get some clarity, sanity, and the big picture in Star Trek, and go where no savvy fan has gone before, Portal 47 is our really, really fun community. It's like a mini con all year long. You can portal47.net and check that out with us too. With me,
folks. Thanks for joining us. We hope to see you in person at a con sometime soon. And until that time, please take care of yourself, stay healthy, and live long and prosper.
Yes. Trek well, everybody.